script rather than this one.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Let's wait a couple of minutes. Hi, everyone. We'll just wait a couple of minutes for people to join. Great. For those just joining, we are just waiting a couple of minutes. So we'll get going very shortly, giving people a chance to join in. Great. What do we think? Should we get going?
Yep, I think we can kick off. That's going to be recorded anyways for those who want to review the first few minutes.
Exactly. Brilliant. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining, everyone. We have over 200 people registered. So I think a lot of people will be waiting for that recording. So this is being recorded. We will share it afterwards, and you'll be able to share that link with colleagues. But this seems to be a very sort of hot and popular topic. So I'm going to introduce our speakers, but yeah, just to say quickly, give an introduction to me. So I'm Toby. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Granular Energy. Just for those who don't know, so we're a technology company, and we provide a platform that's used by energy companies, utilities, traders, people in the energy sector who are really managing and trading energy certificates and traceable energy contracts. And so we provide an end-to-end platform that's used to by the industry to manage the full life cycle around energy certificates, so that when energy is sold, the energy consumers can have full visibility over where that energy has come from, which is useful in lots of different situations, some of which we'll talk about today. And the platform is currently used by over 40 different utilities around the world. We're managing over 100 terawatt hours. And we also do something called hourly matching that we'll talk about later on, just for those who don't know. And then I'm also very pleased to introduce our panel of experts. Really, we've got some of the kind of the world experts on this topic. So maybe Sophie, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, the unmute button was escaping me. So my name is Sophie. I work at STX. So I'm public affairs director there. STX Group is a global environmental commodity trader and a climate solution provider. We work with both corporate and utilities. So on one hand, we support corporate with their decarbonization strategy. And when they have one, we can help them operationalize it. We're actively advising companies on the procurement of granular renewable energy, and we've already have practical experience on trading hourly certificates. And on the other end, with utilities, we can work with them to design and implement their green tariff programs.
And hi everyone, I'm Rachel Swiatek. I'm the Senior Manager at Climate Group, and you may be familiar with Climate Group through our RE100 campaign. I lead the follow-on sister campaign, the 24/7 Carbon-Free Coalition on hourly matching, which I'll explain more about and how it fits into the ecosystem a bit later. But I spend a lot of time talking to corporates and others on 24/7 carbon-free electricity, and have also had the pleasure of being part of SBTi's Scope 2 expert working group, helping to develop the standard. So I can give a bit of insight to the development process as well.
Great, thanks guys. So the topic for today is what is the SBTi corporate net zero standard mean for energy suppliers? And so, I mean, hopefully some of you will have seen that last month SBTi published the new version of the net zero standard. But this, and there's already been quite a lot of discussion about that and what it means for corporates, for businesses. But this session, we really want to focus on, well, what does that mean for the energy sector? What does that mean for the companies that sell energy and have therefore a role to play in helping companies meet this new net zero standard? So that's really what we want to focus on. Sophie's going to just give us some background. What is SBTi? Why is it important? Who does it apply to? And what is this updated document? Rachel is going to talk about specifically the bits of the document, the standard that relate to Scope 2, the emissions from energy consumption and electricity. I'm going to talk about this hourly matching topic that I mentioned earlier, which is a new addition. And then Rachel is going to share some more of the work from the 24/7 Carbon-Free Coalition that she's been leading. And then we've got time for questions. We're going to make sure there's time for questions at the end. Feel free, please start asking questions from now on. Use the Q&A. So if you hit it should be at the top of your Teams. You should be able to find the Q&A section. We're going to use that. So you might have to hit the 3 dots to see the Q&A option. But yeah, please go ahead and just start asking questions there. And then we may take a few of the questions along the way and hopefully have some at the end as well for the discussion. So yeah, please use this opportunity. Right, I'm going to hand over to Sophie. Just let me know when you need me to change the slide.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Toby. So yeah, I'm first going to talk about what is the SBTi, the Science-Based Target Initiative. SBTi is probably very familiar with a lot of corporates, but I'm conscious that we probably have a lot of utilities, energy supplier on the line, so maybe less familiar. So the SBTi was initially founded as a collaboration between CDP, the United Nations Global Compact, the Women Business Coalition, WRI, the World Resources Institute, which also is a co-founder of Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and the WWF. The SBTi is an organization that enables corporate to take credible science-based climate action. And it has a clear framework for target setting and also for monitoring continuous improvement, always based on, aligned with climate science and also business practices. It's very business at its core. SBTi is one of the drivers of corporate demand for utilities and environmental commodities providers. So this is why, as part of my role, I'm very much monitoring all the development at SBTi, because that really drives what corporate will want to see from their suppliers. Some numbers, just to present SBTi. As we speak, so the latest number in July 2026, there are close to 13,900 companies who have targets or commitments, and 11,500 who have validated target. SBTi has experienced a 40% growth in numbers of companies last year, from 2024 to 2025. At the end of 2025, European companies were representing about 50% of all the companies with SBTi targets, but we see Asia as a major driver for growth, with 53% increase in uptake between 2024 and 2025, especially in China, Japan, and India. But Europe and North America are still growing at a very reasonable rate of above 30% in each case. SBTi used to have two different documents, one focusing on near-term targets and one focusing on kind of net zero target. They are combining with this revised standards. They are combining everything into this one big document, which is the Corporate Net Zero Standard V2. And it provides company with the guidance and the tool to set science-based target now in 5-year cycle, aligned with reaching net zero by 2050 at the latest. You can move to the next slide. So this is to briefly cover what the key changes are in version 2. So this, as I mentioned, everything in this document is an important update because this is one of the key framework that drives corporate action. You will see that, I'm not going to get into all the detail of these changes. I know, Rachel, you're going to cover that for Scope 2. But there is clearly a change the change reflects a strategic move from just target setting and more ambition to implementation and action. And it's a document that offers a much more practical, delivery-focused approach. 42% of the section on the version 2 are completely new, and 58% of the section reflect modification or expansion of the existing approach. You will see that there, like in terms of Scope 2, for example, there is still a recognition of the use of market-based instrument as a important tool to support corporate decarbonization. And they are obviously mentioned about hourly matching, which is one of the topics we're going to cover today. Last slide for me. Next slide. So yeah, in terms of transition, so the transition will be gradual. Corporates who already have targets, they can continue using the V1 without changes until the end of their near-term target, which for a lot of companies, 2030. However, even though they don't have to change their targets, they can start implementing some of the approach proposed in version 2. So even some of the implementation for Scope 2, for example, can be used right now. The standard itself is going to be effective from 1st of February 2027. And in 2027, the two standards will coexist. So companies joining SBTi or revalidating their target will have the choice to use V1 or V2. But in 2028, only the version 2 will be the one operational. So from 2027, we can expect having corporates signing up to V2, and from 2028, all companies joining or revalidating their target will use V2. So to conclude, for utilities, what it means, obviously, SBTi and other global standard setters, such as Greenhouse Gas Protocol, the Climate Group, RE100, and then 24/7 Coalition, Carbon-Free Electricity Coalition that is represented by Rachel. They are all separate organizations, but they do interact with each other, and they are part of an ecosystem that is kind of traveling in the same direction, even though they sometimes travel at different pace. And I think important to notice is that first, obviously, market-based instruments are recognized as an important tool to contribute to corporate decarbonization. But there is also a call for more transparency and more granularity, particularly for Scope 2 emission. So for utilities, you may start seeing corporate that ask questions on how they can implement or they can contract more granular contract. So you can definitely start preparing for it, because you will start having questions from 2027. And one thing we always discuss with corporate is obviously acting now may even give you an advantage compared to others. So that's why I think this is going to be an important topic for the next few months and years to come. And now I leave the floor to Rachel to discuss about concretely what it means for Scope 2.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. And yeah, to delve into the changes in Scope 2, I'll actually first need to explain a little more on the new company categorization. So yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. Category A and Category B companies are referred to throughout the standards. Category A companies in any country are if their net turnover is over 450 million euros and full-time equivalent staff of over 1,000 staff. But there is another way of a company being classed as Category A, and that's if they are incorporated in a high-income country, and their Scope 1 and 2 emissions are over 10,000 tons of CO2 equivalents, or they meet two of these other criteria around balance sheets, net turnover, and FTEs. But really, you can think of Category A as essentially the large companies. And then Category B is simply if you're not Category A. And that will come back in when we start to talk about the hourly matching criteria as well. But if we move to the next slide and focus in on the implementation for electricity in the standards, the first thing to know, as Sophie mentioned, market instruments are recognised, and they're also limited to deliverability regions. So this is defined as a geographical area where sources of electricity generation are connected to a synchronous grid and can be reasonably expected to serve sources of electricity consumption connected to that grid. So if you're familiar with RE100 and 24/7 Coalition technical requirements, this is the same concept as locationally matching and sourcing within the same market. There are some exceptions for existing long-term contracts and between regions. But next, the generation assets must be no older than 15 years, whether that's commissioned or repowered. And again, that's the same as under RE100 and 24/7 Coalition rules. There will be some exceptions, but we're waiting for more guidance to come on that. And then the final bit there on temporal matching, Toby is going to deep dive into it next. So what I will add is kind of a little bit more about the expert working groups and how these standards were created. And so I've been part of the expert working group on Scope 2, which is an international group made up of people from public and private sector, that was formed in April 2025. And we've met regularly for workshops for over a year, including an intense but enjoyable 3-day in-person workshop in London with all of the other expert working groups. You have one group for each part of the standards. So I've seen many variations of this standard and a huge amount of collaboration and perspectives from across the world has gone into this, and really commend the SBTi team for their synthesis of that. It's yeah, no easy task. But in terms of like the next steps for the expert working group for Scope 2, we will be continuing, and I'm expecting topics like the guidance on age limit expectations, more guidance on deliverability regions, and how hourly matching should be deployed in target setting context to be on the agenda. But I will now hand over to Toby.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, so I'm going to dive a bit into this topic of hourly matching. It's an area that's particularly close to my heart. I've sort of been working on this area for a long time. I also set up a nonprofit called Energy Tag in the space before handing it over to Killian and his team, so I could then work on Granular. And obviously with Granular, what we work on is much broader. It's very much general kind of green energy contract management, program management, EACs. But one of the things that our platform enables is this concept of hourly matching. And the SBTi corporate net zero standard has introduced a requirement for the first time, not to reach any particular level of hourly matching, but to do what we call hourly disclosure, which is to report on your hourly matching score. So what is hourly matching? There's actually a definition in the net zero standard, which says, hourly matching is the correspondence between electricity consumption and electricity generation attributes within the same hourly time interval through physical or contractual arrangements. So basically, it's saying, if you're claiming to be, making use of clean energy or clean energy attributes, then you need to be able to disclose sort of what is that correlation between when you were consuming the energy and when it was being generated. So within each hour or half-hour time period, where is that energy coming from? And the reason why, actually, they've set this out in the net zero standard, which is that hourly matching of power contracts with consumption is they say it's generally preferable to annual matching because it can support more effective price signals for load shifting and investment into low carbon generation and storage to better align electricity demand with low carbon supply. In other words, what the one of the sort of explanations we give is that if you want a good price signal to the market, that price signal should be reflective of supply and demand. And when you have annual matching, renewable energy is valued at the same price regardless of time of day or season. And as we know, clean energy varies a lot by the time of day, by the season, due to fluctuations in wind or solar output. And moving to hourly matching means that eventually the price signal that's sent to the market is more reflective of the reality. So you should, expect clean energy to be cheaper when it's in an oversupply and more expensive in the times and places when it's in undersupply. And that's really what's meant by price signals. And so when companies choose to purchase clean energy by keeping an eye on the hourly matching score and trying to improve the hourly matching score, what they're doing is they're sending a much more effective price signal for technologies like things like energy storage that actually deliver clean energy when it's needed and not when it's in oversupply. And the reality is many grids now, we're actually producing too much renewable energy at certain times, but not enough at others. And that's really the challenge with the energy transition, is how do we get the grids to operate entirely on clean energy resources, which is going to require a whole kind of range of different technologies. And so in order to sort of encourage this, the standard has a requirement, which is to report the share of electricity consumption matched with low carbon electricity on an hourly basis. And then as an option, you can get extra credit for reaching certain levels of matching by certain time periods. And so, I think this is what Rachel was sort of working on in that working group for a long time. There's a lot of detail here, and I won't go through every line by line, but I just wanted to sort of call out some of the interesting things here. So so firstly, this doesn't apply to every SBTi company. It applies to those category A companies with significant load, so significant demand, and there's a threshold for which it's obligatory. It's still optional for more than optional, it's recommended for category B companies as well, but it's mandatory for those category A companies. I think one thing that's interesting is this concept of assurance. So it's not just about making a claim. The claim needs to be credible and validated. And so I think this is one area where that needs a bit more sort of guidance and clarification, because it says that third-party assurance is required, but it also says that there's still some of the details of the assurance here is to be worked out, exactly what that process will look like. But it does refer to, as Rachel's going to talk about, the technical guidance from the 24/7 Carbon-Free Coalition, which is actually a very clear methodology on how to calculate and then report this hourly matching score. So I think that's really interesting, and then it also requires a kind of public display. So businesses are actually going to have to declare publicly what is this hourly matching score. And then here are some of the targets. So it's 50% by 2030, 75% by 2035, and 90% hourly matching by 2035. So, and that's obviously going to, the feasibility and the costs of reaching those levels will depend on the market where you're operating in. Markets where you already have high availability of clean energy, that is going to be fairly straightforward. Markets where there's less renewable energy available, it's going to be more of a challenge. But the idea is there's this kind of gradual phase in, and hitting these targets is still, recommended but optional, whereas the reporting of the metric is mandatory. And just to say, this is actually very much in line with what has been proposed for the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. So we're still very much in the consultation phase for the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, but they did publish, quite a lot of detail on what is being proposed and why, the justification for this. And the justification mirrors very much what's in the SBTi about, making sure that we're able to accurately report carbon emissions from electricity consumption, and to send these important price signals around hourly matching and deliverability. It's also worth pointing out, we haven't mentioned it so far, but SBTi publishes this kind of sector-specific guidance. So alongside the corporate net zero standard, which applies to all businesses who are part of net zero. And if you actually look, you can go and look on the database. There's a public database of all of the companies that have set SBTi targets, over 11,000 businesses there. Quite a lot of those businesses are in fact energy companies, utilities, that are themselves setting their own targets. And what SBTi does is provide guidance to, companies in specific industries, because and the power sector is has a particularly important role to play in decarbonization and in carbon emissions reporting as well. And so there's actually another document which is providing some sector-specific guidance just for companies in the power sector. Well worth reading. This actually only came out last week or the week before. Anyway, very recently, and this document's still in consultation phase. So please go and take a look at it and submit your feedback on the consultation. Consultation period ends at the end of August. And in there is some interesting guidance. So for instance, it's actually recommended, it's not mandatory, but it's recommended that companies that are selling energy should report every year the hourly accounting interval, right? Like the hourly matching score, effectively, and share this information with end users. So that means share it with end users at hourly granularity. So that basically means helping customers who are buying energy from the energy supplier to see this hourly transparency, and that's very much sort of in line with our view of how this whole thing gets rolled out. It's a bit like that analogy, in a well-known sort of restaurant analogy where if you're asking customers in a restaurant to work out what's in the soup that's just been served to them, that's pretty challenging. It's much easier for the restaurant who made the soup to actually tell their customers what's in it, right? Maybe put it on a menu and then share that menu with everyone who's in the restaurant. So it's if you're selling a product, there is some responsibility on you to disclose where that product has come from, especially if that your customers are themselves being asked, like this document does, to report on what they've purchased. So it's sort of going up the supply chain. And just to say, this is already happening. So back in January, we did a study with Baringa of different energy suppliers around the world to see who is offering hourly matching tariffs, and there were 50 energy suppliers that are already offering hourly matching tariffs. That is, energy tariffs that provide hourly disclosure that give this hourly matching score that's needed for the net zero standard. And these suppliers are in lots of countries. UK is a bit of a hotspot, but they're actually all around Europe, US, Asia Pacific, and South America. You see energy suppliers starting to offer this hourly transparency. So it's now a kind of established product that's increasingly available. And so do go and take a look at that report if you haven't seen it. And then maybe I'm going to wrap up in a minute, but just to say, so what, practically speaking, what needs to happen if you are an energy supplier or utility? What do you actually need to do to help your customers comply with this new rule? well, there's a few things. First of all, as an energy supplier, you're probably serving not just one customer, but lots of customers, and you're having to buy clean energy on behalf of all of those customers, at least the ones who want renewable energy or want to buy clean energy. And so you're buying that from a number of different sources. So it's important to have a good understanding of your position, what you've purchased from the market and what you've sold to customers, and all of those specific requirements. So that's sort of portfolio management. There's then a process of allocation or matching, which is basically how do we match each unit of energy, each megawatt hour that was generated with every megawatt hour that was consumed by customers, down to the kind of metering point level. So both generation and consumption meter points and matching. We have to respect the local registries, so the local EAC issuers, which are basically government appointed bodies, who keep a central record of all of these energy certificates. So any allocations have to be reconciled with those registries and the energy certificates in each local market. And then once that's happened, then reports can be issued to customers on a mass scale. And so just sort of practically speaking, this is also just so happens to be very much the work that we do with energy suppliers. So we really work with energy suppliers, enabling them to meet the requirements of their customers and providing this kind of third-party assurance, as well as some technical capabilities. I won't go into the detail of the platform, but the sort of the output is being able to share with customers information that looks like this. So imagine every customer of an energy supplier being able to get access to a dashboard that looks like this, or a PDF report. I'll just draw your attention to a few things. So you can see in this line, this is the consumption of the business. This is in this case, it's a manufacturing company, so they've got daytime consumption during the week and lower consumption at nighttime and at weekends. And then in each 1 hour period, there's actually a breakdown of the specific power plants where the energy has come from. And that's the result of this sort of allocation that we were talking about. And so they can see in some hours they have slightly more supply than there is demand, and in other hours slightly less. And what that means is that they're still match perfectly 100% on an annual period or on a monthly period. So they've still got full 100% annual matching, as is required. But they have this hourly matching score, and you can look up there, it's actually 79%. And this is the weighted average percentage matching in each of those hours over the course of a year. And that can be translated to a carbon emissions score. So this is the location-based and the market-based. So and then you can also see the other attributes. You can see where those power plants are located, and then there are PDF reports that come along with this that have all of the certificate IDs from the registry, and whether those this commissioning date of those power plants and things like that. So the full audit trail that businesses need, and so it's really about just basically enabling. Energy suppliers are in a great position to provide a huge amount of information to customers about the energy that they're selling, and what we're suggesting is this SBTi net zero standard creates a great opportunity for energy suppliers to provide more information, rather than just say it's renewable but not disclose any more than that, to actually give this detailed breakdown, because that will lead to, we think, some real changes that can help accelerate the energy transition. Yeah, so anyway, that's a kind of just summary of the hourly matching part and sort of an insight into what's sort of what's involved. I'm going to hand back to Rachel, who's going to tell us more about the Carbon Free Coalition.
Cheers, Toby. And actually, before I get into the coalition, I'm conscious that not everyone might be familiar with Climate Group. So just a bit of background there. Climate Group brings together leading businesses and governments to tackle the world's biggest sources of emissions, so electricity and energy included in that. And by building influential networks and holding organisations to account, we turn ambition into action on the path to net zero. If we go to the next slide, as I mentioned, you might be most familiar with us through our RE100 programme, which has over 430 companies from across the globe committed to 100% annually matching their electricity consumption with renewable generation. If we go on to the next slide, we saw through our work here the needed shift towards hourly matching coming and started to prepare the support system for companies to do this, leading to the creation of the 24/7 Carbon Free Coalition. So if we go on to the next slide, we are a coalition of innovative corporate energy buyer leaders taking that ambitious next step towards ensuring that businesses will be powered by 24/7 carbon-free electricity, so every day, every hour, and sourced locally. So the coalition sits alongside and complements RE100 and is designed for those leaders exploring this next step. Like SBTi, and as has been mentioned, we have technical criteria. We also have reporting and transparent disclosure. Where we differ is that at some commitment levels, companies do set target hourly matching percentages, and we work with them and the wider ecosystem to turn this target into a reality for them. So that involves policy advocacy, peer learning facilitation, and also technical support. So we officially launched at London Climate Action Week last month with corporate partners from across the world and across industries, including Unilever, Cathay Life, Google, and AirTrunk, to name a few. And we're proud to be working with a host of technical partners, including Granular Energy. And if we go on to the next slide, an area that we work with Granular Energy on that I'd particularly like to highlight is our Solutions Accelerator workshops. And these are a series of co-designed workshops over 12 months that bring together supply and buy side to tackle 24/7 implementation issues. And I'll share some insight on our first workshop and our current programme in just a moment. But I will take the opportunity to mention that we're speaking to those interested in partnering for the next round of the Solution Accelerator workshops. And so partners will be able to connect with those leading corporate buyers, get the brand visibility, such as through Climate Week New York and our other events, help shape the emerging standards like the technical criteria, which did feed into the development of SBTi's standards, and also showcase market leadership towards clean energy systems. But I will get into the insights from our first workshop on the next slide that we held in Singapore in conjunction with the Asia Action Summit. So some high-level insights. Number one, 24/7 CFE is a progression, not a pivot. So there was strong alignment that 24/7 CFE builds on rather than replaces existing 100% renewable electricity strategies. So that's the mindset companies are coming at this with. Number two, the shift is being driven by real market signals. So we've seen growing corporate interest, and that's from a combination of evolving standards and reporting expectations, as we've been discussing, but also increased focus on transparency and credibility, and the need for greater resilience in volatile energy markets that we're seeing. And companies are preparing now, even when no immediate adoption is planned. So number 3, no single solution delivers 24/7. So that's no single technology will deliver hourly matching on its own. It's about how we're combining that. It's about hybrid contracting, bringing in storage and demand flexibility as well. Number 4, the biggest challenges are operational, not just technical. So yes, there are barriers around limited technology availability, but participants also pointed to data visibility gaps, procurement complexity, internal alignment and capability, and uneven market and regulatory readiness. And I think several of those that are things that people on this call would be well placed to help overcome. And then number 5, progress will be iterative and driven by corporates. So most companies are not aiming for full 24/7 alignment today, but are starting with their pilots and priority sites and testing approaches in specific markets to build confidence before scaling out. So really the takeaway is that the corporate demand is there and is expressed through procurement and engagement with suppliers that we're seeing now already. In the workshop, we also delved into what's changing in practice, such as with technologies and barriers that remain. But I'm conscious of time, so I'll keep going on to the next slide with what we've got coming up next. Our next workshop is on implementation feasibility. So think digital accessibility, regulatory gaps and the like. That will be held in India, but all of these workshops have strong online participation too. And for time, I won't go through the detail on the others. We'll just go to the next slide. And just to say, please do get in touch if you're interested in being involved in the next round of workshops. Email address on there. And please note that funding contribution is required. You can also sign up to our 24/7 newsletter to keep in the loop with all things coalition and solutions accelerator workshops. But really, I kind of wanted to leave on a final thought from me around kind of granular energy accounting is here. Lots of corporates are looking at this, understanding what it means for them. They're asking their suppliers about it, want to know what's available from suppliers. So the demand is there. And there are already products on the market from the likes of Engie, Constellation, Jeracross and others. But as Toby mentioned in the report, that's growing rapidly as well. So ultimately, act now to stay competitive in this changing market. And Toby, I'll hand back to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, just wrapping up because I want to make sure we've got some time for questions. I just did this slide quickly, but you summarized it perfectly, Rachel. Just to say, I think the Net Zero Standard 2.0 is a really significant change on how companies must purchase clean energy, given all of the deliverability, additionality, and temporal matching requirements. It's the first time that there's a requirement for this concept of hourly disclosure that's mandatory and applicable internationally. These changes effectively apply from now onwards because anyone who's signing a 3-year energy contract is likely to need to deal with the new net zero standard in that time frame. And so this, we think, creates an opportunity for energy suppliers to help their customers meet those challenges. Cool, excellent. So we've got some questions. There's one I saw, Sophie, you answered it from Vanessa. Sorry, from Vanessa. Maybe do you want to just summarize? So you gave a quick response, but would you like to just maybe, Sophie, just quickly summarize the question and your answer?
Yeah, sure. So there was a question whether you can take any measures within the activity pools, either through a PPA or other market instrument, and that to be counted towards target achievement. So indeed, one of the options for the Scope 2 target, it is to set a target based on the percentage of low carbon electricity into your all total usage of electricity. And you have to measure progress along this target using market instruments. So, and whether it is unbundled green tariffs or PPA, they are all counting. And there, as Rachel showed, there are specific rules in terms of the criteria with some exemption, for example, for PPA regarding the wider deliverability zone, for example. But yeah, definitely. And one thing I mentioned too, the idea that SBTi has is to have this implementation hierarchy. So first, company need to look at what they can do internally. So that could be, any energy efficiency projects they can do internally, or if they can put their own self-consumption for renewable electricity projects. But then, of course, they can move to activity pool, i.e. the grid, and use the instrument to reach the target.
Great, thanks. Great. Please, if you haven't yet asked a question, please do. We've got a few others. Maybe Eleanor's question is about, what are the biggest challenges for the implementation of SBTi for utilities? I mean, I'd like to know what are the challenges what are the biggest challenges that you're hearing from corporates as well. So maybe to you, Sophie, first, and then to Rachel. What are the not just hourly matching or Scope 2, but what are some of the other kind of constraints that people are raising?
So from what we hear from corporate on the SBTi, especially on the Scope 2, it's maybe a need for clearer guidance. Lots of discussion about this deliverability zone and deliverability criteria. So I know SBTi said they will publish further guidance, but of course, it is definitely needed, because I've heard already different interpretation, and this is all based on kind of reasonable interpretation of the corporate. So obviously, they probably need to be a bit clearer than that. In terms of this all hourly discussion, I think a lot of the questions, people are usually stuck on the fact that registries don't provide hourly certificate yet, although many are doing pilots, but they don't really provide that. And I think it's just understanding the way to go around it, and with this idea of using kind of a secondary step to do what we call in our jargon config 3 certificates, for example, which is a way that you can still use a asset generation curve and your data of consumption, and you can still do some matching, and you can get a kind of hourly performance score, even though you don't clearly have hourly stamp certificate from the registry yet.
Yeah, and I'll also add kind of from the workshop insights that I shared, but pulling out the procurement complexity one that kept coming up, as it feels relevant to this group, because essentially corporates are wanting simpler ways of procuring towards hourly matching. At the moment, it feels very complex for them, so they're looking to their suppliers to offer those simple products that they want to see on the market. So that's the demand call that I would also add for this group.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say, if you were, like Sophie touched on it, but Stuart's question around the energy certificates, EACs is the general term. People in the UK know them as REGOs or RECs in the US. yes, they're all, in most countries today, they're still issued with a monthly timestamp, not an hourly timestamp. There are some, sort of early pilot projects with registries issuing hourly, but it's generally all still monthly certificates that we're talking about. If you haven't read it, it's really worth reading the technical guidance from the 24/7 Carbon-Free Coalition that Rachel was talking about, because there is a really clear methodology of how to do what Sophie was talking about, which is how to combine hourly data with monthly certificates. So you do your hourly matching, and then you reconcile with the monthly certificate, so you know which asset the power has come from, which monthly energy was generated, and you can go and get the hourly production data from the same asset in the same month from another source. And there's some quite strict rules about how to do that to prevent any kind of double counting. But it does mean that you can reliably get this sort of hourly matching score. We want certificates to be issued with an hourly timestamp or 15-minute timestamp, as the European Union is proposing, so that you can start trading individual 15-minute certificates, and that's where we think a lot of other benefits will come in. Now we see it as a bit of an interim measure that delivers some benefits, but not the full benefits of hourly matching. So that's happening in the UK. I can give you a bit of an update. Friday, the Department of Energy in the UK published the Clean Flexibility Roadmap, and if you go in there, you'll find a small section on REGOs and the fact that they've done a consultation recently on whether or not there's a benefit to adding a timestamp to REGOs, and they got positive feedback, so they're going to take that idea forwards. Still no time frame, but an announcement nonetheless. So happy to share that link. So we've got two more questions. Alex on additionality, 15-year cutoff, and then Saskia's on blockchain. So maybe let's go through. Maybe, I don't know, Sophie, do you want to talk a little bit about your view on the 15-year rule, and then maybe Rachel as well from what was discussed?
Yeah, actually, probably Rachel has the background, because to be honest, this 15-year cutoff was initially, proposed by RE100. So it kind of is becoming a bit of a standard in the corporate procurement, the criteria. We have this 15-year target date for either commissioning or repowering. And I don't exactly know where it comes from, to be honest. So Rachel, if you do have the background, please jump in.
Yeah, that's driving additionality. So we want new clean generation sources driven to the grid. That's part of the impact that corporates can show that they are having through this. So that's why it exists. But as you mentioned there, repowering, if an asset gets decommissioned and then repowered within that 15-year age, then applies. So we're not losing those assets completely. And there are some other exemptions too. But actually, in the kind of development of this, 10 years was put in there first off, and it went back to the RE100 standard of 15. So that's maybe a bit interesting history of how that's gone.
We actually have a few, not many, but we have a few corporates who actually want to take the same criteria a bit further. So who ask for 5 years. So it happens. So it is indeed a bit of this additional question. But yeah, the 15 year, I don't know why this was chosen initially. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some logic around, typically this is a length of financing, or there's some certainty that you need over a 15-year in order to finance a new project. But it's it's a debate, because I think it will always be a debate, because it's very hard to define additionality and to prove that something would have been built with or without your presence, your involvement. But I think that, you know, in my interpretation is, in general, it's sort of trying to encourage people to you know, look to newer assets because they'll be closer to the financing. We need to move on. We could definitely talk about that for a long time. Saskia's asked a really good question about blockchain. Maybe my quick answer to that, I think we could have a long debate, is that, you know, essentially all certificate registries around the world, so if it's been around for 20 years, they all run on a ledger, right? And that ledger is a centralized ledger as opposed to a decentralized ledger. And it's centralized because they're operated by authorities like grid operators or regulators under the appointment of a government. So the need for a decentralized ledger, distributed ledger, is not so apparent because of this structure. Now, if I think governments got rid of the, you know, relinquished any involvement and there was no kind of central authority, then, you know, maybe there is more of a case for blockchain. But ultimately, I don't think they would still be energy certificates. It wouldn't fundamentally, it just changes the nature of the database, right? As a blockchain, it's a kind of a secure database. I don't think there's anything particularly different. One
interesting case of kind of maybe blockchain use that I've seen is more when you start using EACs for your supply chain, so that there is a good traceability of, you know, for which clients the supplier is buying their EACs, and so that can be passed down the chain.
Yeah, true. I think where there's no government oversight,
exactly,
then that work is more useful. Yeah. Okay, what's the time? Yeah, we're at time. I see some great questions have just come in at the last minute. Sorry. Cool. All right. So thank you, everyone. We'll share these. We'll try and answer some of these questions in the follow-up. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. And thank you to the great guests, Sophie and Rachel, and to Eleanor for helping organize.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you, Rachel, for sharing your knowledge.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.